Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle on Jump to It. I'm joined as usual by Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward, and we're going to discuss all things racing. We've had some great action in the last week, some cracking stuff both the UK and Ireland, and we're going to have a look about all that and see if we can find you some winners for the future as well towards the end of the show. So Emma, Johnny, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vinny.
Thanks, Vincent.
Now, Emma, first of all, you're on your way back from Gordon Elliott's. You've been up there doing a bit of a stable tour for us. You were also in Shark Hanlon's and Gavin Cromwell's within the last week, so you've been a busy girl. How did you get on in those three places? Enjoyable, I hope.
Yeah, good. Just on the way back from Gordon's there now, he kind of had a bit of an open morning there talking about his kind of possible Leopardstown runners now the entries are out. It's a massive setup there, and it's been great to get around to see a few different yards in the last few weeks. I've been to Sharks and Gavin Cromwell's, like you said, and everyone's been fierce accommodating. So no, it's been brilliant to see how everyone does something a bit different. So it's good to see it.
Yeah, I've watched it so far. I've seen the one that you did in Gavin Cromwell's. We have that up on the site at the moment, and I was very impressed with the amount of horses he has. He seems to have any amount of good horses or very well bred horses with big expectations. So be interesting to see how they get on. He had one good winner during the week as well. Was it in Goran Park? I know the way you're thinking. That was one of the ones that you'd pinpointed as one of the ones to watch from there. And Johnny was also keen on that horse at one stage when we were looking at our horses to follow for the season. Johnny, you were in telling me you were in Thurles last week. Was your one port of call where you were in the flesh on track? There was a decent crowd there, I believe.
There was, yeah. I have to say, I really enjoyed going to Thurles, Vinny. It's kind of almost like a throwback to another era, really. Like, it wouldn't be the most modern racetrack in the world, and maybe people would say that it needs a bit of upgrading, but it's very, very friendly. And the Maloney family, they run it so well. And I got the train down, and I messaged Katie Maloney to ask her was there a courtesy bus, and she just ended up collecting me at the train station, brought me through the track through their actual house, which is right beside it. It's a real family operation, and there's a lovely atmosphere there. And I thought this was a weekend where the ground kind of started to come right for jumps horses, particularly in Goran and to a lesser extent Navan, but even in Thurles, the horses were getting into the ground. Some of the kind of the land around the track was actually waterlogged. Thurles obviously takes it so well, and some very, very good horses. I think this was a brilliant weekend for jumps racing in general, and I think when you look at Thurles, some of the performances we have, Favre de Champdu, in particular, I suppose it was kind of a sign of things to come. But really enjoyed my day at Thurles.
Great stuff. And talking about horses that we saw the last week, there's one in particular was just unbelievable in my book anyway. Constitution Hill finally lived up to the hype for me. I was most impressed with that fighting fifth. Emma, what do you think? Is this the best you've seen in your short life?
Oh look, obviously he couldn't be any better, but I can't get on board the best I've ever seen thing until he's won a champion hurdle, unfortunately. But no, look, on just kind of visual ability, I know like Epitant, he beat Epitant fairly easy, former champion hurdle winner, but she's probably well past her best at the same time. But no, I look kind of coming into the race, I was still in the honeysuckle camp, but it's kind of hard to see that happening now after seeing him. He looks like a real kind of freak of nature, doesn't he?
That's what I think. I thought he was truly awesome. Everything he did was perfect. You couldn't do it any other way, any more impressively than what he did. I know the opposition wasn't great, but I wouldn't mind that too much. I just thought everything about it was fabulous. Johnny, what did you think? Were you as equally impressed as I was?
I hope you don't mind me saying this, Vinny. I'd imagine there's a bit of an age discrepancy between you and Emma, and I love the fact that the young woman starting off in racing is actually like cushioning your complete hype about this horse, and you've seen everything in all your years of racing, and you're jumping on the bandwagon that this is the greatest ever. To be honest, like I was surprised that looking at the betting exchanges, he was 1-3 before the race, and I was kind of thinking like, am I missing something here? Because as good as Eptont is, like she's what she is, and that's was it the third last where she kind of I think the first hurdle in the straight where she sort of looked like she was half closing on him and she missed it, and he kind of, as you say, he did everything right. All of a sudden the race went from like vaguely in some doubt to being completely over in literally a split second. And what did he win by 12 lengths? I'm we spoke pre-show. I think you won't mind me saying that you think Honeysuckle has very little chance against him. The only thing about Honeysuckle is, and she's done this time and time again. She effectively just wins the same way, in the sense that she beats what's in front of her. In terms of form, she's not going to beat him. But for me, the fact that you've this hot pot train by Nikki Henderson, who's odds on for the champion hurdle. We're in late November. We've December, January, February, and the start of March, where people will be talking about Constitution Hill at a time when British racing is under so much duress in many ways. I think this is great for racing, and he looks a freak. He's obviously going to be very hard to beat the champion hurdle, but we bemoan the fact that flat horses kind of retire at the age of 3. Hopefully, this fella will be around a long time, and hopefully, Honeysuckle takes him on.
Yeah, I'm a bit wary
Yeah,
of
and
that because I have a soft spot for Honeysuckle. She's unbeaten in 16. She runs next weekend, hopefully in the Hatton's Grace. Love to see her make it 17. Maybe an Irish champion hurdle makes it 18. I just really don't want to see her run up against. If we get to
Well,
Cheltenham
if you
and we're
would you
talking,
retire her?
I would. I'd retire her before Cheltenham. That's for sure.
ah,
If presuming all things are equal and Constitution Hill is
no, you
in the
can't.
same form we just saw him in, I would be taking. I'd be taking her home, put her to the paddocks. I wouldn't want her to be beaten, not just beaten, but she could
Ah,
be well beaten by Constitution Hill if we see a horse
Emma,
that we
you're not
saw on
having
Saturday
it.
turn up in Cheltenham. Yeah, there
no,
you go.
no.
We
I think look, she's a champion. I think she deserves. Look, he'll probably beat her. Like all, she'd be 9 by the time champion hurdle comes around. She's past her best. But look, she's a champion. She deserves her crack at it. I don't think an unbeaten record will mean anything to a mare like her. She's still probably going to be the best mare to ever retire to stud National Hunt mare. She's dual champion hurdle winner, being beaten by a horse like Constitution Hill. I don't think it'll take anything away from her at her age anyway. So no, I want to see
yeah,
her take her crack
yeah.
anyway, all being well.
Well, I'm not even thinking of it from the stud point of view. I don't really care about her value at stud. That's irrelevant to
Mm.
me because I'm not going to get anything out of it. But I would certainly think that just her unbeaten record is something that has been fantastic the last few years, particularly her partnership with Rachel. It's done a lot for racing, done a lot for Irish racing for that point. And I'd hate to see her beaten, and not just beaten. I wouldn't mind like if it turned out it was a classic champion hurdle and Honeysuckle went down by a short head to Constitution Hill and they're 20 clear of everything else. Fantastic. But I could just see this
Mm.
turning into a rout the way it is, that I just think Constitution Hill is head and shoulders above her and above anything else that's out there. Now, maybe I'll be proved wrong, but the betting is telling me I'm right for starters. Odds on, and we're
Yeah,
only
I,
in
I think
November.
I think
Mm.
with with the following that she has, I think I'd be with Emma on this. I think Henry would be of the Henry de Bromhead would be of the sporting nature, and he was kind of quite bullish in the press event at the last week, where he was like, she doesn't have anything to prove at this stage, and I think he would be of the mind to take on Constitution Hill. And we don't know, Vinny. I don't think he'd destroy her. I think he'd definitely get a race. And if it were a case that he came off the bridle and wasn't 2 links up coming up the hill, who knows with the way she battles, and it'd be fantastic for racing, like absolutely fantastic for racing, were they to take each other on in March.
Oh, it would. It'd be fantastic, and I'd like to see it, I suppose. But at the same time, I just think for the soft spot I have for Honeysuckle, I think it might be better if she didn't. But there you are. We'll wait and see. She'll go and blow them away in a Hatton's Grace, and all of a sudden, it's game on, perhaps. But we shall see. Time will tell, I suppose. Moving on with some other cracking action over the weekend. With some great performances in Newbury, particularly. I saw a few that I really liked. Two Henderson ones in particular. Lucia, which won on Saturday, but Jet Powered, which was very impressive on Friday and is now second favourite for the Supreme Novices behind Facile Vega. Did you see any of those, Emma, over the weekend?
Yeah, I was actually in Goran on Saturday, so I missed Lucia. But yeah, Jet Powered was fierce impressive, wasn't he? All this talk about Henderson last week, pulling horses out on the good ground. But I know if I had a horse like Jet Powered, probably Nicky be the one on my list to send him to. Like, he just, with these kind of classy horses, he just campaigns them so well, and he brings them to the top every time. And the likes of Sprinter, Sacra, Altior. You've Shishkin and now Constitution Hill, maybe even Jet Powered. Like, he just knows how to campaign those good horses and keep them right. So yeah, I think Jet Powered could be probably the next one on his list. He looked like a real natural, didn't he?
He did, yeah. And you were saying you were in Goran Park. There was some good action there too.
Mm.
What was that like as a day out? Very heavy ground was the first thing to note, I think.
Yeah, it's probably the heaviest ground we've seen so far this year. It was really, really testing. Like you'd want a horse who really loved heavy ground. Like there was a lot of tired finishes. I think we saw that in the first race. Kind of the fancied ones got very, very tired. Henry's horse got a very tired fall. But no, there was some really good horses out. I'd say Classic Getaway was an impressive winner of the beginners chase. That was nearly a grade one in anything but name. There was some really top class horses in that one. I'd say one that really caught my eye was Oliver McKiernan's horse, Kelnisi Star. To be honest, probably first time I backed a win in a long time. I backed him because I couldn't believe he wasn't favourite. He he won a bumper in Gore, and a bumper that always produces very good horse. I think Bob Ollinger and a few others have won it. And York Hill, it kind of goes back, if you look through the winners through the years, it's always been a good horse that won it. And he won that on real heavy ground. So I thought coming into this, like, you would want to take a real good horse to beat him. I didn't think Pink in the Park was that real good horse. And even before the race, he looked heavy, and I think Oliver said afterwards they thought that he'd need the run. So yeah, he really impressed me, and he'd be one I'd be taking out of that day, definitely.
Great stuff. And Johnny, you'd have watched the weekend. What did you make of it? What was your star performances?
Yeah, Jet Powered was very good. He won a point to point for Cormac Farrell, I think, in Boris House, and his stallion Jetaway is kind of making waves now, and he looks like he's going to be the best of them. I do wonder with Facile Vega where he'll end up trip wise. I think he could easily go to the Ballymore if he runs the Supreme. We have Marine Nationale running at the weekend. I think it's going to be a hell of a race, the Supreme this year, and it's good to see another horse of Nicky's. Like he seems to have every year, he seems to have this kind of well fancied horse for the Supreme, and he was very very good at Gorin on Saturday. As Emma mentioned, that beginner's chase was a hell of a race, and I think what was notable about the winner, as a getaway, was that you'd the favourite in the race who jumped very very well, and like he absolutely left him for dead. And when you look at Manila Cocooner, he had very, very good hurdle form. And I think in general, apart from maybe sort of the last and the second last, he was very, very good. And he absolutely left him for dead. And a good horse of Henry sort of beaten when falling as well. I know the way you're thinking, rather. I thought he was very good in the novice hurdle. I thought it was a really kind of tough assignment for him, given that he'd won a maiden hurdle, albeit a good maiden hurdle. And I love the way he stayed on at the end of the race. I think stepping up to 2.5 miles, he's going to be a very, very good horse, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes at Cheltenham as well. Brilliant weekend of racing, Vinny.
Yeah, Navan, then we haven't even touched on it yet, but there were some right performances there. We'd Comfort Zone, Grange Clare West, Dawn Rising beating American Mike, the Big Dog, Lifetime Ambition in the Troytown. That was a cracker. They were so far clear of everything else. And then Fildor and St. Roy. That was some performance too. The two of them were pulled miles clear as well. I think we've seen some very good horses. American Mike was the one big disappointment, I would have thought. Emma Gordon, did he mention anything about that horse at your stable tour this morning?
Yeah, he said that he didn't. It wasn't American Mike's true running. Basically, there was an issue with him, and they're going to have to try and sort that out before we see him again. I think he'll have to have a few quiet weeks and kind of assess where he is then after that. But no, Gordon was pretty confident that he's a much better horse than what we saw yesterday. So if you're going to go by that, I'd probably put a line through yesterday's run. But to be honest, watching the race myself, I just thought they went way too hard. Affordale Fury was a horse that I really liked coming into the race. But he's kind of, we saw him at Galway as well the last time. He can get lit up a bit easily. And I'd say American Mike just kind of led him along, and they just went a bit too quick in front. And John Rising was kind of going to pick up the pieces. I don't think he would have won if he stayed up anyway. They kind of probably would have both finished fairly tired. But no, it wasn't American Mike's true running, going by what Gordon said.
I find
Yeah,
the betting
American
and
Mike.
running, Vinny, I find it fascinating. And yesterday was one of those days in Navan where I was looking at it, I was like, I've seen this so many times in Navan where horses are trading short, turning in, and you're like, has anyone actually watched racing in Navan before? When it's anyway testing, it takes a hell of a lot of getting. And a friend of mine backed the winner, Dawn Rising, I think at 160 to 1 in running, and you're laying a horse at 160 to 1 who stays well on the flat, and I think would have won regardless of what happened. And it was a fascinating day's racing. In the opening 3-year-old hurdle, Gordon had a horse, a Nathaniel filly, New Year's Honours, traded really short and running and was beaten 20 lengths. And I thought that effort by Comfort Zone was was very impressive. And the amount of juvenile horses that JP McManus has now is absolutely staggering. It's going to be absolute bingo trying to figure out like where they'll end up, what'll go in the Fred Winter, which he won last year at Brazil, what'll he run in the Triumph Hurdle. I think it's going to be a hell of a Triumph Hurdle this year, and these horses coming off the flat that JP has staggering quality.
Yeah, I'd agree. The other thing you talk about that in running, I saw some of the in-running markets on one of the World Cup soccer matches. Argentina, when they got beaten in their first game after Messi had scored a penalty, there was 2 million matched at 1 to 33 on Argentina. If you had the 2 million, do you really want to win a couple of $100,000? I have no idea what people to be thinking. Crazy stuff, but there you go. But
Yeah.
that soccer now has been, I have been enjoying it, I have to say, the World Cup. It's on night and day. I've seen a fair few matches and I've been very disappointed with a lot of them, particularly because I'm not getting the results I'm expecting, I suppose, is the main thing.
Still a long way to go, Vinny. One thing I should mention, which I was very, very disappointed about in the sense of where sort of betting on Irish racing is going, and this should be noted, in the 1250 race, Charles Burns had a horse, Summer Melody, who had won a bumper last time out. Now, in fairness, it did look a good maiden hurdle on paper, and there was a negative about the favourite on the track in terms of the racecourse discourse, but he'd won a maiden hurdle at Navan at 5 to 1, trained by Charles Burns, looked maybe an 8 or 10 to 1 shot. 11 bookmakers, if I counted right, put him in at least 50 to 1 the night before, and I'm like how could you literally do this? A good race card at Navan, and you all make that mistake, and I thought that was absolutely demoralising in terms of the effort that people are putting in and pricing these races.
As in the effort the punters are putting in, or the bookmakers? As in the bookmakers aren't putting any effort in?
It was clear that like somebody made a mistake and literally 9 sheep followed him. Like there was no way this horse could be a 50 to 1 chance. And what was it, 10 or 11 bookmakers went 33s or bigger. I despair at times.
Yeah, well, that's not something to despair about. That's fabulous. That's what you're looking for as a punter. You're hoping they make those mistakes. Yeah. Well, there you go. It's very difficult to get on at those prices. I see you see this day in, day out, that there's nighttime gambles and they mean nothing. The horse is going from 50 to 5 to 1 or whatever, but sure, it only took maybe 20 quid. So no one can get on at those prices. It's irrelevant, I suppose, to a large extent. So it's like in the old days, there used to be tissue prices that weren't actual prices, that the bookmakers would have them going to a race meeting knowing what prices they were going to chalk up when they'd put it up. And by the time the prices are put up, they're obviously going to be different, and that's when the market really forms on the day of the race. But anyway, there you go. Let's look at a horse to follow from each of us from last week. There must be something that really stuck out. Emma, first off, have you got one for me?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Kalanisi Star, the horse I talked about earlier for Oliver Kieran. I think just seeing him in Gore, and he looks real round, and he'll probably come on an awful lot for it. So I think he could be a real smart one going forward. Where he'll go next, I'm not sure, but he'll be a real smart novice hurdler on testing ground, definitely.
Great stuff. And Johnny, what took your eye?
I'm going to give Indiana Jones for Robcour, who ran in the maiden chase as Thurles. He cost 280 grand, Vinny, in 2019, which would have made him a 3-year-old. And he's a half brother to French Dynamite, or Max Dynamite, as I called him when I was interviewing Mouse at the track. This horse was a bit of a basket case last season, in that his first 2 runs over fences, he was second to Mr. Incredible and Bustleton, and from what I remember, he jumped quite well. He then had 3 successive falls, which is completely mad, and went back over hurdles at the end of the campaign out of sort of exasperation. When I was in the parade ring for the race, like, he's absolutely staggeringly good looking, massive big horse, and I was like, how did this lad fall in 3 successive chases? And he jumped way better behind the goffer. He was kind of weak in the bet and went off a 10 to 1 chance, albeit in a very strong beginner's chase. And I said to Mouse afterwards, are your 2 best horses in your yard actually half brothers? And he said, we've better than that. So maybe Indiana Jones isn't going to be a grade 1 horse or anything like that, but I thought the way he jumped, loved being out in front. I think there's a very good race to be won with him.
Great stuff. Yeah, I like the Goffer, the horse that won that race. He was one I was following last season in handicap hurdles. I thought he looked well handicapped, so it'll be interesting to see what he does over fences by the end of the season. For me, I'm going to pick one that won.
He could end up in a handicap at Cheltenham, because, like you mentioned, they might try to protect his mark now. I thought he was very, very good. He absolutely bolted up in a good race.
He did, yeah. I thought last season he looked like he could have been not too far off top class, so we'll wait and see what happens over fences. For me, I'm going to pick one that won in Wetherby on Wednesday. It's an ex-Joseph O'Brien, 3-year-old, a son of Highland Reel, called Spartan Army. It was sold for 170k and went to Alan King. I got a call about this before it won in Wetherby to tell me to back it for the Triumph. Um, at that stage, it was 33-1. It won very well, and it's still 25-1. So I think it mightn't be the worst bet in the world, because the Triumph has in recent years ended up in a smallish field. So maybe if it did get there, you might get a bit of each way value out of the 25. But it's a long term prospect. But you'd like to think Spartan Army will win again over the Christmas.
I think
It was
that's
a
a
really
fair
nice
shout, Vinny.
performance in heavy ground.
Yeah, I think there's he won on heavy ground, but he's like by Highland Reel, and when he won it down Royal, it was yielding. I like flat horses that go over hurdles that have won over sort of a mile and two as well as he did, because it means that they've toe, and then when they prove that they stay, there's probably an inbuilt prejudice against British horses now in novice races in terms of the betting market. Like if Willie Mullins trained this, it'd probably be like fives for the Triumph or something. So that's a very good shout, I think.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, the only negative about it is it was a Joseph O'Brien horse, and if it was any good, you'd think JP would have mopped it up and have it as one of his battalion going to Cheltenham. So that's the only worry for me. That's the negative, is the fact that they sold it for 170 grand. Now, having said that, it was a Qatar racing horse, so maybe JP didn't have the option. It was going to the sales and someone outbid him. I have no idea, but I do know they think a lot of this in Alan King, so it'll be interesting to see. It'd be nice to see a yard like Alan King's having a contender at Cheltenham too. Then looking ahead, just the last little thing. Next weekend, we've got some really good racing in Fairyhouse. Are either of you going to go there?
Might try and get up to see Honeysuckle, but no concrete plans yet. I'd like to see her. See her again. I think I saw her nearly every time she ran last year. So to get the kind of victory tour her last season, to be good to kind of see her as much as I can.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. I hope she wins. I hope half the field that are entered turn up, because it looks like a cracker. It could be a cracker with the likes of Sir Gerhardt in there and lots of other Willie Mullins ones to take her on. So it could be a fair race. Johnny, will you go racing the weekend?
Yeah, I am planning to go, Vinny, and just a shout out to my friends Scott from East Belfast. There's a load of them coming down on the bus for a big day at Fairyhouse, and big racing fans coming down, and I hope they have a good day. And I hope, I mean, what have we left? 15 at the moment, and we're recording this on
Yeah.
Monday at 2:30. And if, as you say, if even some of these horses show up, it's going to be a hell of a race, and she might actually have a race as well, which would be great. And maybe Honeysuckle might make the case that she hasn't gone away, you know.
Yeah, well, we'll wait and see. I hope you're right. I hope you're both right. It would be great to see her win. Obviously, I want to see her win, and I'd like to see her win impressively, and then maybe we have something really special come March. Anyway, thanks for joining me. It's been great chatting to you again, and have a great week. And everyone listening and watching, I hope you have a great week too. And we'll talk again next week, hopefully, about Honeysuckle's great win in the Hatton's Grace. Thanks again. Bye for now.